Hey, what is up, guys? It's Slick here. I'm back again with another video giving my thoughts on Wonder Woman, which I did just see on Thursday night, opening night, or I guess the night before opening night. But anyway, I did see Wonder Woman. I want to give my thoughts on the film. I was a huge fan of this movie, as I was expecting going into it. I had high expectations. First of all, even when DC movies get really low reviews, I still have high expectations. I mean, Batman v Superman was trashed, and then I went into that movie with low expectations because, like, oh man, this movie's gonna suck. And then I thought it was phenomenal, and it is still to this day my favorite comic book movie of all time. And then Suicide Squad got trashed, and I was like, alright, I'm not falling for that this time. I go into Suicide Squad, I love that movie too. So this movie, just that it got positive reviews, in fact, I was a little bit scared that I wasn't going to like it because up to this point, the pattern is bad reviews, and I personally enjoy the movie. But, you know, these characters I do have a strong affinity to. Even characters like Deadshot and Harley Quinn and Killer Croc and characters like this. You know, I have you know, an attachment to these characters, and certainly is the case with Wonder Woman and Batman, etc. So, in regards to Wonder Woman, I was anticipating this film, and I wanted this film to have a grandeur to it that, you know, this movie has been so long overdue, and it's truly amazing to see it on the big screen just in and of itself. Just seeing this movie is like a privilege in a way, if it's sort of weird to explain. And I'm only 19 years old, so it's not like, you know, anything like that. You know, like I'm 60 years old, I've been waiting my whole life for this movie. It is just one of those things, though. It's just really remarkable to see a Wonder Woman film on the silver screen. It's disappointing that the movie only had a $100 million budget, you know, relative to like BVS, which is upwards of $250 with reshoots and stuff. I think they probably could have invested in a little bit more, considering the movie's going to make about $100 million just this first weekend, and I think it showed a little bit in some of the action scenes. And the third act did get a little crazy with CGI. With that being said, though, I love the third act of this movie. I loved all three acts of this movie, and in many ways, they are distinctly different films. And sometimes movies like Batman v Superman can get trashed for being chunked up and sort of not identifiable as a single piece that flows together. But really, this is three distinct movies. You have Wonder Woman's origin story kind of in the first act, and then you have, I don't know, a very weird kind of, it's not a comedy, but it is definitely like a coming-of-age story in a weird way, even though Wonder Woman's like super old. Although this movie doesn't do a very good job at portraying her age, but that's another story for another day. And then we also have the third act, which is a war film, to be fair. And the third act I did enjoy very much, even with, and we will get into spoilers right now, so let's just get into spoilers right here. I don't really feel like doing a non-spoiler review. So spoilers going on now. Okay. With Ares and stuff like that, I thought that the film was very well directed, and with Patty Jenkins taking the helm of the film, I mean, I did find that there were emotional beats in the movie that maybe you wouldn't have gotten with Zack Snyder directing the movie. Not to say that other male directors couldn't reach that, but I do feel that Patty Jenkins' film had a heart to it that was unprecedented in DC up to the DCEU at this point. And I love that each DCEU movie is very distinct, with the exception of Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. I find to be tonally comparable, but Suicide Squad is completely different than the other DCEU movies, but still a DCEU movie, if that makes sense. It's very recognizable. There's things that are recognizable in DC films, and a resounding score and soundtrack is of the utmost importance to fit into the DCEU. And this movie simply didn't have that. I mean, if there's one complaint I have, is that the score is not memorable. You know, you're not going to be humming the Wonder Woman soundtrack on the way out, except for the soundtrack filmed or recorded, I guess, whatever, by Hans Zimmer. And I think that this movie would have done so much better if Hans Zimmer was behind the helm of the soundtrack. I wish that he was. He's just fed up of doing them. He's done The Amazing Spider-Man, and he's just sick of doing them. I understand it. But he is the best superhero score, you know, director, composer. So with that being said, I wish that he was in here. But we take what we can get. This score is not bad by any means. It's just ambient noise. It's not in the forefront enough of the film, which is a staple of the DCU films, with not only Suicide Squad, but especially Man of Steel and BVS with Hans Zimmer's magnificent score. This movie just doesn't have it. I don't think the score is that good, and I also don't think Patty Jenkins put it to the forefront up quite enough. And moments that are extremely powerful. I mean, the best moment in this film, in my opinion, is when Wonder Woman climbs up the ladder and is going into no man's land. And they did a very good thing. I was watching Chris Stuckman's review, and I agree just wholeheartedly with what he said, is Chris Pine's character, Steve Trevor, of course, says, no man can pass here, this is no man's land, and then Wonder Woman gets her hair down, she's ready to go up, and she could have said something very cringy like, well, I'm a woman, so, you know, or it just gone full-blown feminist right there. And this is a very feminist movie, don't get me wrong, but in a subliminal way, in a way that men cannot be turned off by. It's not in that sort of way. It is a feminist film just inherently by the fact you have this female hero leading the charge and you know, whipping all these dudes' asses, which is cool to see and awesome to see. But it again is not done in an over-the-top feminist way where you have these cringy lines that I think if some directors were in charge of, they would have had those lines in there. Thankfully, Patty Jenkins did not go that route. She just made an amazing film that is for everybody, and in her interview, she talks about that and how that is important. And for that reason, this is the reason that I think that these screenings that are only accessible to women of the film are somewhat ridiculous in many ways. But this is a movie that, again, you know, women and men were in my theater enjoying the film, and I think that the result, the outcome was very good. I'm just very pleased with this movie. I will give it a solid 9 out of 10, as I have all of the DCEU movies. BVS I have a little higher than above a 9, maybe like a 9.5 or around there. But overall, you know, all the DC movies are in the 9 range or above. And to be fair, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight movies are up there as well. WB has just been doing a great job with these DC films, despite what I guess the critics would say, in my opinion, which doesn't matter for anything. Everybody's a critic, I guess. These movies have been very good, and I cannot wait to see Justice League, of course, with Joss Whedon taking over the film. I do have my trepidations about that, with Joss Whedon being a self-proclaimed Marvel guy. It is somewhat... I do feel that there is an inherent problem with having a Marvel guy being tasked with bringing the Justice League to life for the first time ever. I understand that Zack Snyder did the bulk of the work and he's just finishing the movie, but, you know, again, this Justice League movie, it's going to be, for Zack Snyder and also for us as fans, it's going to be more than just an action flick. It is truly mythic. It is iconic. It is an event of history, and that might be overstated to some people, but if you have the affinity and the attachment to characters like Aquaman, and just the Justice League in its entirety, as we all do as DC fans, it is that for you, and it certainly is that for me. And I don't know if Joss Whedon quite has the attachment to the Justice League as many of us fans do, which is an issue, but hopefully he's just managing the reshoots and stuff like that. I'm sure it is still Zack Snyder's film. But as for Wonder Woman, I'll get back on track. I've been rambling a little bit, not too much about Wonder Woman. But as for Wonder Woman in its entirety, again, it is very much so 3 distinct films, but the second act I found to be the most enjoyable, where we see, again, Wonder Woman climbing up into no man's land. It's just freaking beast, and it just... Oh my god, the action is very good in this film. It is, you've seen a lot of the action in the trailers, which is maybe an issue for some people. It is not particularly high on action, but it's not low on action either. And you do go into this film knowing probably how it's going to end. And one of the ideas that I love that they explored in this film is the notion of you know, mankind being corruptible. And we see that Ares is basically the force behind the First World War and creating and making the Germans evil. And, you know, I realized, and I was thinking about this, if they did this for the Second World War, which Wonder Woman's origin is usually portrayed in, it would have been very insensitive. If Ares is just the one that's making the Nazis, you know, kill all the Jews and gypsies and all this stuff, it would have been extremely insensitive, and it would have, you know, I think in some ways been offensive. And I'm not one to be triggered by things easily, but that would have just been a very, very poor move, because the Germans were absolutely evil in the Second World War. I mean, unequivocally evil. But we look at the First World War, I think less so. It's less black and blue in that sense. And, you know, really in the First World War, you have all these pacts between these countries, and one declares war on the other, and if you're familiar with history, it's just a trickle-down domino effect, and ultimately the world is at war with each other. But with that being said, though, I think that it is manageable to have Ares be controlling the German forces and make them evil, and as soon as you kill Ares, then boom, you know, the war is over. And in many ways, the First World War is a pointless war. It should not have been fought, and, you know, it's reasonable that we could suspect that the only reason the war is happening is because people are possessed to fight against one another, because the reason everybody was fighting was so stupid. So my point is, it worked very well in this film with the World War I setting. If it was World War II, though, it would have been outright stupid. So they did a very good job, and I was one of the ones that said it should have been a World War II movie instead of World War I. But then I see the film, and I realize exactly why they did it. It makes a lot of sense, because you can explore that idea of, you know, why are we fighting, the sort of exposing war for being pointless in some ways. It works very well in the setting of this movie, and in many other settings. A lot of wars that we've fought, you know, in the world have been somewhat avoidable in many ways. The Second World War is truly an exception to that, and I'm thankful they avoided that. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts about Wonder Woman and just everything about the film. I want to know your thoughts on it. Again, top moment for me, Wonder Woman coming out of no man's land, and the score there really did shine. I do feel that the music could have been a little stronger, but the action overall was very good, the story, and it did have a heart. It did have an emotional sort of tie to it that was gripping and maybe stronger than any of the other DC films up to this point. And for that reason, I give Wonder Woman a solid 9 out of 10. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. My name is Slickmoth. I'll see you guys in the next one.